Welcome to the Look Good, Move Well podcast.
Do you want me to introduce us since you're still eating your apple? Welcome back to the Look Good, Move Well podcast, everyone. Marcus is finishing up his snack. He looks like he's really enjoying this apple. It's a very crunchy, crisp apple. And one thing that always interests me about how you eat an apple, Marcus, is that you eat the full core, seeds, everything, stem.
Well, the seeds are still in this little bowl. I draw the line at the seeds.
Yeah. Are the seeds toxic or something? Are they?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
They also are bitter, really bitter.
Yeah.
I've bitten into a few seeds in my day. The trick to getting the most out of an apple is to eat it from the bottom. So if you start eating from the bottom, then almost in the first two bites, you wipe out what is the core.
Yeah.
The thing that you would normally just try and like eat around. Once that's gone, you're like, oh, wow, there's so much apple flesh. I mean, the only part that's you really want to avoid is just this like very small sphere in the middle of the apple. But all the rest is quite, I mean, it's quite juicy. It's quite good. So
you eat an apple like a horse.
is that how horses eat them? I've not seen that.
I think so.
I mean, I am a filly.
You are a filly. Yeah, that's right.
Well, we were just discussing what we had for breakfast because that's kind of our levels microphone check when we do this. But then, Sati, you said that you were back to tracking your food in a fitness app.
Yeah.
A tracking app. So
Back on the app.
what got you back on the app?
Well, I just had my consult with my coach, as one does when one works with a functional bodybuilding individual coach. So we check in every month or so and see how training is going, see how nutrition is going. And all those things are going really well, but I have not been tracking my macros or my food intake for quite some time. And we just thought it would be a good idea to do a little quantity check to make sure that I'm eating enough calories and eating enough protein, especially.
So interesting. That's what we're going to discuss that in a very podcast very soon. But my question is, how is your coach going to know whether you're eating enough? What's the strategy or the plan? Or are you unaware and you're just tracking and you'll take guidance when it comes? Oh,
well, it's great because our coaches now are working on Chronometer, where when our coaches work with clients, we have like Chronometer Pro accounts where I'm now hooked up to Shauna's Chronometer. So she has full visibility into everything that I'm logging. So she can give me feedback anytime she checks in.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Super easy.
And then what, if anything, is a pain point for you around tracking?
The biggest pain point is that when I make a big meal for the kids and I, for like a family meal, which I do every Thursday for dinner, we have like a big sit down dinner. And then it's annoying to have to sort of log everything that I'm putting into a big batch of food and then figure out what quantity of that batch of food I'm eating. So I really just took a guess last night because I couldn't be bothered to I was doing a million things at once and I was like, I can't just be measuring out the butter. I'm just going to pour and go and slice and kind of eyeball it from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and depending on how frequently that is, that can be really challenging, annoying, frustrating for people, I'm sure. But the good news is that, if that's something that you do consistently in your lifestyle, then you track it, you'll get pretty good at consistently guessing. You'll whatever you guessed last night, next Thursday when it's family dinner night, you'll kind of make the same guess as well, know? And yeah, there's always room for error. And there's less room for error the more meticulous you get. But if you decide I'm only going to be 80% perfect and I'm going to leave a room for error there, then that just remains your room for error always. And so after a month at 80% room for error, you get to figure out what your numbers are and then you can adjust them. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because if you guessed last night, for example, that you ate, a 700 calorie dinner. And it was really a 900 calorie dinner. So you were off by 200 calories. Somebody'd be like, oh my God, I'm going to gain all this fat. Like if I just, right?
Yeah.
But guess what? After a month, you're always off by 200.
Mm-hmm.
And now you know, like what you were reporting isn't getting you where you want to go.
Yeah.
So guess what? You cut 200 calories somewhere,
Right.
someplace that you know how to cut it, right?
Yeah.
Or you just say, oh, that family dinner night meal on Thursdays, I gotta, only eat 80% of what's on the plate, right? Yeah. So it's like the precision of that is not as important. It's really the consistency of it, which is most important.
Yeah.
Being able to do it the right way the same way every time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Not the right way, the same way every time.
Well, it's interesting because I'm pretty much a perfectionist in a lot of things like that, where on a normal day when I'm just cooking for myself, I like to be very controlled and very accurate as to what I'm measuring and counting. But I also had to remember, well, what's the point of this whole exercise? I'm not trying to go on a really strict cut for a bodybuilding show. I'm just trying to make sure I eat enough and make sure I eat enough protein. So is it really going to matter? So I think that's also something that we're going to get into a little bit today, of the all or nothing mentality a little bit.
I know. Like it's like, do we segue into that topic because we're already talking about eating enough calories? We have 2 podcast topics that we're gonna hit today.
Yeah.
They're gonna be different episodes. And I'm conflicted on which way to go.
We can start wherever you want. It's our podcast.
I know, but it could go either way right now.
I know.
And they're kind of intertwined. It's tough. Let's flip a coin. Take my ring. There's no side to it.
Okay.
And we're going to go we'll stick with, are we eating enough?
Okay.
This was I was just commenting on how I was confused. We're going to talk about this today. I was like, I'm pretty sure we've done this already.
Because you've been talking about it nonstop.
Right. Because we
week.
We wrote some like a newsletter editorial about it.
Right.
We did a Q&A on Instagram story that then turned into about 10 pieces of filmed content where we're answering these questions. And then I spent, 75 minutes with the all the coaches, Shauna included, for functional bodybuilding yesterday in an education kind of team meeting call. And all we discussed, the topic was, is eating enough? Like, is there such a thing as I'm not eating enough? Like, I'm not eating enough, or I'm eating, I'm under eating. And that was like collectively about 5 hours of, brain power going towards this week. And so I think we're in a good position to talk about it on the podcast today. And this is why I was confused. I was like, I'm pretty sure we talked about this already.
Yeah, well, I wasn't in that meeting yesterday, so I was curious what came out of it.
Yes, well, it was quite quite interesting to kind of hear from all the coaches who have a variety of different experiences working with clients, and I wanted to hear from them what their experience of this topic was. And so I presented the topic much the same way we presented it in the newsletter, and that is to say, first, pose the question: what does it mean to not eat enough? Like, what are people talking about when they say, "Oh, I don't eat enough," or when you just said it right now, make sure I'm eating enough? Because if you're not eating enough, one way of talking about that is like, well, if you don't eat enough, you're in some form of starvation. You're in a calorie deficit. If you don't eat enough for long enough periods of time, you lose dramatic amounts of weight. You get sick, you have illness, you potentially can die, right? So like, this is true starvation. Somebody who's malnourished, doesn't get what they need, and it's, that can't happen forever. But that's not what we're seeing in the Western world. Like there's not a lot. There's some, and I don't want to say there's zero, but especially with our audience, there's not a lot of that happening. So technically nobody's under eating chronically to the point of illness.
Sure.
But there are people that are under eating. We're still talking about under eating. So what does that mean?
Right.
Well, under eating means that maybe for a period of time, you restrict calories, and that can go two ways. You restrict calories for a period of time. Let's say like you eat 1,000 calories for a month. You lose a lot of body fat, but then after a month, you stop losing body fat. And now 1,000 calories and what you do each day results in you just sort of being at a maintenance level of body weight. And you're confused. You're like, man, what's going on? Well, your body has metabolically adapted. We can talk about that more today. And now what used to be a calorie deficit for you is just a maintenance level of calories. And so that's what your body has adapted to make whole with, and you stop losing weight. Guess what? That's a good thing. Because if in the absence of that adaptation, that metabolic adaptation, guess what? You keep losing weight. You start to lose muscle mass. You start to starve, get ill, sick, and potentially die. So this is our body's way of sort of protecting us against starvation. The second scenario is somebody who's eating 1,000 calories a day. They're under eating. Maybe they are burning 2,000 a day. So they're really just, they cut their calories in half from what they need, and they do great for 3 to 5 days. They feel very, very accomplished. They're sticking to the plan. It's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but then Friday rolls around, it's happy hour, or it's, go out with friends, and like they have the nachos. They have a few bites of nachos, not thinking that they're going to actually eat the whole thing, but they have a couple bites and it's like, wow, that was really delicious. Oh my God, I realize how hungry I am. I haven't eaten really any food this week. And then they have more and they have more, and then they eat the whole plate. Then they have a couple beers and they're just like, fuck it. And then the next day they kind of just keep that party going. And then Sunday they keep it going. And then Monday rolls around. They're like, I'm back in it. I'm going to go back on the horse. I'm going to cut my calories. They're back to 1,000. They're dialed in. And it's this kind of yo-yo. So this person under ate for 5 days or 4.5 days, only to give way to a 2.5 day kind of overeating. Maybe they're eating 3,000, 3,500 calories a day. So when they arrive at Monday, everything's a wash. Whatever they cut in the early part of last week was overdone on the weekend, and now they're kind of at neutral.
Yeah.
So this person's like frustrated. And in some cases, the weekend was such a big bender with food that like week after week after week, they actually find themselves gaining weight. All this aggressive cutting on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday and Friday morning has not led to any weight loss. It's actually led to weight gain. Oh my gosh. So here we have two different types of people who are like, I'm under eating. I could give another example, but under eating doesn't work. Cutting calories doesn't work. Look, I cut calories and I'm not losing body fat anymore. Therefore, calories in, calories out doesn't make sense. Or, hey, I cut calories I cut calories aggressively. And look, I'm doing it every single week, but I can't lose any weight. It's like, well, you actually aren't cutting calories because it's not a day-to-day equation. It's a week, month, long-term averages equation, and your averages are kind of right in the middle. They're not, you aren't maintaining a deficit. So, and I guess it's appropriate to even talk about the third category, because you, I think, fit into the third category, which is like, it's not necessarily about body composition and fat loss. It's about getting the most out of each day of training.
Yep.
So this is something that I experienced a lot with CrossFitters when I was coaching them. And it also happens, folks like yourself, very focused on training hard and eating clean, like focusing on getting good quality ingredients, but not so focused on like, how much am I supposed to be having to properly energize my training, recover from my training each and every day. you'll get there by the end of the week because after 5 days of hard training, it's the weekend and you're like, man, I feel like hungry, like I'm underfed. So I'm going to overeat for 2 days, and you get back to baseline, and then Monday starts again. And why is that a problem? Well, because the 5 hard days of training you had Monday through Friday, when you wanted to be your best, be recovered, have enough energy to perform well, you were actually restricting calories without knowing it. You were just like kind of under eating in an effort to stay clean and just to like eat the right stuff. And so you didn't perform to your best. You didn't get the most out of every training session. And so it'd be advantageous to identify what is the right amount of calories to really support day to day training. And this was a big problem for me when I competed in CrossFit. Was, every 5 to 7 to 10 days, I needed a refeed day.
Yeah.
And refeed days, like, I'm not opposed to them, because if you're truly in a deficit, you got to get those calories back. You don't want to miss those. But would it be possible to have a scenario where you never need a refeed day because you've always been topping off your energy needs, your macronutrient needs each and every day? And I think this was something that, like, when Matt Fraser retired and he really came out and started talking a lot about his process as an athlete in CrossFit, it was really, eye-opening to see just how committed he was to daily caloric intake to match the tremendous amount of output that he had, and how he, learned from his days of weightlifting where he needed to eat a lot of calories to like add weight and to make, he would in some ways force feed, which was what you needed to do as a hard training athlete. Because when you're training, you don't want to eat.
Yeah.
You have low appetite when you're actually training.
Yeah.
And if you're training 4 times a day like he was, or 3 times a day, like, then you gotta force the calories in. And he talked a lot about even reaching for low quality calories, because that was the best way to get energy in, and eating Snickers bars and drinking Cokes and, whatever it took to get, a lot of sugar into a system. Sometimes that's most important, because the calorie equation needs to be met. If he was under eating, 6 out of 7 days a week and waiting for his refeed day, then his performance would have suffered. This was like a big aha moment for, I think, a lot of athletes watching and be like, oh, he didn't miss a single opportunity to perform well. And he was taking that nutrition very seriously, and taking it seriously didn't mean eating paleo and clean. It meant crushing the calories from whatever source he could. And yeah, he was getting protein from good sources too, but it was like, a Snickers? Oh no, that's so, it's like, it's the calories that he needed to function.
Totally. Yeah. Well, one thing I'd really love to dig into is the psychology around coming to your amount, concluding your amount of calories to work from, or your macros to work from, because I feel like this is a little bit of a loaded question for people based on so many different things that are cultural, generally speaking. For if you want to look good, you shouldn't eat too much, as well as assumptions around what you may or may not be burning every day, especially if you're active, going off calorie trackers like your Fitness Band, which are notoriously inaccurate. So I feel like there are all these mixed messages, and I'd love to address what assumptions people have around coming to that amount, and also what we might recommend for a starting place for that.
Yeah. Well, I do feel like one of the most important things to address here is the only way anybody is going to arrive at a very basic understanding of what they need for, let's just say, maintenance, right? To just sort of maintain their physique and perform well, is through consistently doing the same thing for kind of an extended period of time. I would say almost a month is necessary. So what do I mean by that? What I don't mean is that you're not going to figure this out by looking at a calculator online. calculators will give you an estimate that might give you a good place to start, a good ballpark. But then going and implementing that every single day for a long period of time, that's how you're going to arrive at a good answer as to whether that's the right amount for you.
Mm-hmm.
Fitness trackers are not going to give you that. Your smart device on your wrist that tells you how many calories you burn today is nowhere near an accurate representation of how many calories you need to consume to maintain and function well. And the third thing that's really difficult, I think, in the culture, the diet culture that we have is there's so much built in culturally around food and what it means to be healthy that is connected to eating less or restricting or choosing the healthy food that has fewer calories compared to the other thing. So I think people are very often in a, they underestimate a lot. So why is that hard for people? Because I just don't see people being really consistent with food for periods of time long enough to know whether this is working.
Yes.
If you don't, let's say you get your numbers off of a calculator and you put them in and you eat them for 5 days, and then you have a day where you kind of go off, and then you're back on it for 4 days, and then you have 2 days where you go off, and then you're like, well, I don't know, like, I don't think these numbers are working. It's like, well, you have no idea if they're working because you didn't actually do it.
Mm-hmm.
If you pick numbers to start with, if you like guesstimate where to start, or if you go by your intuition, like, I think this is what I should be eating, but that intuition is so influenced by the diet culture of eating less, then you are likely under eating, or like trying to eat something low. And after a period of time, it starts to feel unsustainable and you stop. The best approach is, as I see it, is to figuring this out is something that people are very going to have a hard time getting on board with.
Yeah.
And that is overestimate how much you need to eat.
Yeah.
Eat a lot of food.
Mm-hmm.
Good foods, things you like, getting enough protein, but build out a structure to your diet or your meal plan, whatever, that on the first few days feels like, wow, this is a lot of food. And then stick to that for like 3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Because what happens when you are going on the plus side, if you're getting closer to your true maintenance or a surplus, is when you pick foods you like, you eat a lot of them, and there's good quality stuff in there too, then your desire to cheat, to eat off plan, to binge, to do all the things that derail this process of figuring out what your true like maintenance numbers are, they almost all go away. When you have kind of topped off yourself with like a lot of food, your body's like, okay, it's going to take everything I can to just get this food in. And this is totally satisfying. I don't feel hungry after these meals. You do that for a month, you are going to have so much information. And in many cases, people will find after about a week or two of adaptation to that, they're like, this feels like a great amount of food. I have more energy. They metabolically adapt in the opposite direction as the example I gave at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
You have a little bit more food. Guess what? Now your brain is telling you like, we're full. We've got plenty of energy. We've got abundance. There's no famine. We're not starving. Go out and skip around, jump around, use all your energy, fidget all day, walk an extra 1,000 steps, walk an extra 3,000 steps, push it harder on that last set of back squats. Like, do all the things because we're safe.
Yeah.
We're good. We've got what we need.
Yeah.
And after that period of time, you start to realize, and if you're one of the few people that this happens to, very few people, you actually end up at the end of those 30 days and you've put on a couple pounds of, maybe it's muscle, maybe it's fat, maybe, the rare case where somebody actually puts on weight. If you do, then guess what? You're like, oh, well, I can dial it back 300 calories, no problem. Like, I'm eating more than I've ever eaten before. And a calorie deficit from this point is easy. Hell of a lot easier than being like in this cutting thing all the time, constantly under eating, having this yo-yo, bouncing, missing days, skipping, having junk food, and then coming back to the calorie deficit and getting to the end of a month and being like, man, how do I cut 300 calories off of 1,200? Like, I'm going to be starving. It's like, it's brutal.
Yeah. Yes.
So this is the eat as much as you can of good quality food that you like consistently with enough protein, move as much as you can with that, do it for 30 days, and then decide, oh, I might need to dial it back. And what I've always seen for myself, now granted, I've done enough of this to like have kind of good ballparks, is if I commit to that process, if like I've kind of feeling a little depleted, if I feel like, oh man, maybe I just haven't been eating enough, like I'm having these hunger cravings, I bump up my calories by 500 a day. I commit to it. And after a month, that's my new maintenance. And I'm feeling good. I'm like, holy shit, I get to eat more. I'm feeling energetic, like, and I'm doing awesome on more food. Isn't that a win? Like, most people are going to be like, yeah, I want to eat more food and feel good and look just as good, if not better. This is how we can, and so that's the true way to figure this out, as opposed to like, let me go by intuition or let me go by what I like believe is healthy, which is going to probably land you in this restrictive phase. Let me go by what the calculator says, but I manipulated it by entering in these, I'm low activity, or, you saw like the maintenance level calories, but then you saw the recomposition calories, like, oh, maybe I should pick those. And, like, you can kind of game it to like get in the less calorie phase. It's just too common for people to do that.
Yeah. This is great because this is exactly my experience the first time I started tracking, which was with you, because we were testing out some other software, nutrition software. We're like, okay, yeah, like Marcus will be the coach, I'll be the client, and we'll test how this software works. And I was tracking, you're like, okay, just track everything that you normally eat for a while and let's just see where you're at naturally. And that was 1,900 calories a day on average. And then you're like, okay, now eat a couple hundred more every day. I was like, really? And it was such even being around you and how we eat and knowing that as athletes, we tend to eat a little bit more and we're putting that to use in training. There's still such an ingrained number in my head because you always hear that nutrition label based on a 2,000 calorie a day diet.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, 2,100 calories? Like, you want me to eat more than the average, like, recommended calorie amount? There was something that seemed so like absurd about it, like almost shocking. And then I started doing that and I was like, this is a lot of food. I can eat a few Reese's peanut butter cups. I can eat some extra potato. I can have some butter. Like, this is great. But it was exactly like you said. I mean, I put all that energy toward moving and training. I wasn't waking up in the middle of the night thinking about going to the kitchen for a banana. It was like, that was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, if you are in that camp of somebody who tries to push it a little bit more, so long as you're consistent and you actually put in, like I did this for 30 days or 3 weeks, and you actually gain a little bit of weight, guess what? Like, well, now you actually know where your maintenance is. It's much easier to find it that way than trying to undereat. And remember, undereating comes with it so many powerful physiological, psychological, hormonal cues that are going to make you reach for things and break your diet.
Yeah.
When you're underfed, your body and your hormones and your neurochemical signals, they know how to motivate you to go get food.
Yes.
Think about this. Think about how powerful your willpower is. Like,
right.
Check this out for a second. imagine, just like close your eyes, okay? You're in some climate that is hot, which doesn't really inspire a lot of movement, okay? You haven't really been able to get water for like 2 days. So you're thirsty, you're dying of thirst, and you haven't eaten in 4 days. You're really low energy, but you're like, the only way I can get out of this is to go and hunt something or search for water. Like I gotta get up. If I just sit here, I'm dying. Your brain and your hormones, like your body's has to have a system to motivate you to get out of that shitty situation to go and do something crazy like chase down a baboon and rip its head off to eat it. Okay. Like there has to be at that point you need more than just a little motivation. You need like a fire poker in the ass to be like, get up and go. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of internal mechanisms that are alive inside of you when you start to get underfed.
Yeah.
When you start to restrict your calories or you try to eat your quote unquote maintenance because you think it's your maintenance, but it's really below what you need to be eating. You're that kind of under eater. Every 5th day, every 10th day, you're just like, God, I just can't, I need to eat I'm going to eat something. I'm really hungry. And it goes off the rails. And it's not because you have bad willpower. It's because you have evolved to have these powerful motivators inside of you. Thank goodness we have these powerful motivators inside of us. The problem is we don't have to get up and go kill or hunt anything. We have to dial up Uber Eats, or we just have to like reach for the plentiful supplies in our cupboard. So the best way to combat all of this crazy stuff is not to like, don't buy the chocolate chip cookies for your house. Like get rid of all the junk, like
right.
Erase all the apps that can get you food easily. No, an easier way to do this is just eat enough good food, eat more of it. Try and overeat on good food, mm-hmm. Guess what? Like it'll suppress all of that craving and all that stuff that like all that you have for junk food, and you'll actually be able to be consistent for periods of time. So every day and every time, which it happens periodically where I have this like craving for more food and I want to overeat, I just pause and I'm like, I let it happen. I'm like, okay, and I don't beat myself up. I say, I got to up my calories each day. Mm-hmm. I've been under eating clearly because this doesn't happen when I'm overfed.
Right.
Talk to somebody who's in a true bulk, where they're eating 500 calories over maintenance every day for months. Ask them if they want to go out for ice cream. They're like, fuck no, like I don't want to eat anything else. Like I am cool. Like this is enough food for me. If you've never felt that before, it's worth exploring what that's like to get to a state where you're like, and guess what? If you overeat by 500 calories a day for a month, you will not turn into the, morbidly obese person. It won't happen. It cannot happen in that short a period of time. And most likely you will metabolically adapt and actually just burn more of that energy. And what you'll learn at the end of that month is powerful.
Yes.
You might be 1 or 2 pounds of muscle heavier and 1 or 2 pounds of fat heavier, mm-hmm. but nothing that can't change. To truly bulk up in mass and get huge takes dedication over years. Right. It doesn't happen in 30 days. But what you can learn psychologically and about what calories, what's maintenance, what, all that, mm-hmm. It's there's a lot to be had there.
Yeah. I would really strongly encourage a lot of women to pay attention to this specifically because there is such a huge psychological inclination of many women, not all, but many women, to be as small as possible, to take up as little space as possible, to eat as little as possible. And if you've done that and it hasn't worked for you and it's been the same old struggle, why not try the alternative?
I thank you for saying that. And it's good to come from your voice, not just mine, but I agree for sure. Okay. We've arrived at the end of this podcast.
We have.
Thanks for going on the journey with us, everyone.
Yeah, we got fired up.
Yeah. And we'll catch you on the next one. If you want to shoot us a DM and let us know some topics or follow-up questions on this particular topic, we'd love to hear them. That's happening over on Instagram at Marcus Philly, at Satya Khan, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.